And the concrete piece is that we have, as you all know, or most of you know, we have access to resources through the Mental Health Services Act to do innovation projects. We're very focused on trying to create an innovation project, and so are other counties, I think, following our lead, that will kind of recreate that type of service, and that won't be bound by spending all the time writing medical charts and worrying about different regulations to draw down money, which is crippling. I mean, we're overinvested in things like hospital and institution, but we're also crippled because we can't use the money freely to just take care of people.
Right.
With your heart. And I will say that while in the States it hasn't kind of caught fire at a cultural level, there have been experiments like this, which I think have been incredibly powerful. One of them is the Village that we know about, and Richard probably has spoken to many about. There's also the Progress Foundation in San Francisco. There are examples of this, but we want to do it in a way that we can create a movement in Los Angeles County, leveraging resources and leadership in a way that hasn't been done. I don't mean to be talking. I don't want this to be all talk. We want to move. We want to do stuff, and we have concrete plans.
Dr. Sherin, what is holding back? That's what I'd like to know. The money.
What's holding back? Well, I mean, to get money,
to get.
Well, yesterday we had the state. The state was here. We went and we met with the state. The state had, and this was serendipitous, that they had their commission meeting in LA while this wonderful delegation was here. We went and we talked to them, and we're going to be going back, putting together plans to get permission to use money in a way that's very, very flexible, where we think of it as creating an ecosystem. We think about a biosphere, a place that is isolated from all the constraints that make it difficult for us to do business. And one thing I haven't explained to these folks in detail is how shackled we are by the bureaucracy. I mean, it's not. We have to go after that. It's impossible to pick here. All right, we'll go right here. I'm going to go left to right.
About 25 years ago, I met two women from Trieste and a guy from Vancouver and myself. We were doing a seminar in Japan around community-based services and how do you really open the community. The Trieste folks were telling us about a hotel they ran in Trieste, which was totally run by service users. And it was an incredible, beg pardon?
Social cooperatives.
Yeah.
Social cooperative.
Right, but it was a hotel that took people, guests from outside, and it was an incredible adventure for them to try to loosen up Japan to look at this, where the laws are extremely tight. But I think one of the problems, and the Trieste model has been a touchstone for me for the last 30 years. But we've done pilots here. John mentioned the Village. That was a pilot 28 years ago. And then it morphed gradually into Prop 63, our funding source for about a quarter of mental health services. But the problem is that once you got past the pilot stage, it became bureaucratized. I think that has happened, and that's the problem with being a part of a state that is the sixth largest economy in the world, and it's just very hard to de-bureaucratize things. We've tried a few things in LA County, and they get stopped at the point of the Board of Supervisors. They get stopped somewhere in the political process. We need to find a way to overcome that, and maybe you all can help us do it.
Thank you, yeah. Right on. All right, I'm moving right along. And there's a lot of people, a lot of hands, so let's try to make it
Okay.
quick.
You went to Twin Towers. Back in 2014, when I learned when my son was there that the educational-based incarceration program was not available to any of the jail mental health inmates, I and Dr. Gasco met with Terry McDonald, and we asked if that could change. I brought some Antioch professors there to see it, who wanted to teach creative writing and wanted to do social work groups. And still, they haven't been authorized to get there. At the time, we went to a pod out of all the pods, and I saw the pod my son was in. And I got to tell you, it was like a sardine can. They're in a sardine can with nothing to do all day long. They don't have anywhere to even walk around. And it's demonic, and they get sicker. I think something that we could do right away is to get people in there, peers and teachers, to get more deputies, because they have a big excuse: we don't have enough deputies. That's something that we could do concretely to help these men and women have something to live for while they're there, and to progress in their lives. So what do you think?
Maybe stand up so you can hear.
Can I just make a very brief intervention, because it's a very legitimate question. How do we start? Where do we start? Dr. Sherin said, very importantly, don't lose sight of it. It has to be part of a movement.
That's right.
Otherwise, it isn't going to succeed. Or it will flourish and then it will die. When do we start? Where do we start? I will say it's already started here. The moment these guys came to Trieste, it started. As Kelly said, she could not forget it. They will have to do something. Here, all of us interacting with you all, it's part of that process. We have started. Nothing is going to stop us. But we have to stay there. We have a very good vision of where we want to be. But this process is going to take time. It's going to take patience. But as long as you all are going to be involved in it, not just Dr. Sherin, he's going to bring this about. It's you guys. You're going to do it, and we're going to do it together, and we'll get there.
So I have two questions of anyone on the panel, or any ones of the panel who'd like to respond to this. And I have a son in his 50s, and he's been diagnosed as schizoaffective. He was homeless for many years because he chose not to be at home. And one of the reasons for that was because he was afraid of the law. And the law, he was bothering people in a restaurant. I'd like to know how you deal with that. And the only recourse that the manager had was to call law enforcement at that time. So they call law enforcement, and then he is cited. He's afraid to go to court. He's afraid to have treatment. So I'm wondering, how do you deal with that in Trieste?
That's a critical question, because what I perceive, it's very appropriate. I think it's important to create a system that is friendly to people, so where people not to be scared by the service. And of course, we are very much helped by legislation, because the law in Italy prescribes that the voluntary treatment can be done only when the service failed. So put an obligation to the mental health services to try without compulsion. And only when you have failed other attempts, you have to use compulsion for a very limited time. But we do it in the community mental health center, so we don't do it in a locked facility. So it means one by one, staying with the person for the minimum time required to regain a consent to care, and to regain particularly the trusty relationship that we want with the person. So the response is that your son would be scared to go to the mental health center, but if he didn't want to go, we come to you, we come to him, we go and search for him with the police, try to engage him even in the street, and then try to persuade him to receive some kind of help. Then we start to upgrade maybe in a program, hopefully a life program, what he wants to do, etc., and engage him. But the flexibility of the system is a key. So providing services at home when required, inviting people to come to a mental health center, maybe just to have food, and then start a conversation, and then treatment. Because sometimes you have to build a relationship first, and then to allow. So having a flexible services that deals with the individual, taking into account that particular condition, that particular life story, and of course working with the family. So it's the flexibility, the person focus, so the person at the center, that's the key for us. Not creating boxes where you have to fit the person, and particularly overcome the fear for psychiatry. But the fear for psychiatry is based on the institutional features. So closing the asylum sometimes doesn't mean anything. It means replicating the same mentality based on dangerousness, fear, social exclusion in other facilities. This is what we saw sometimes here. So this is something that is completely anti-therapeutic, and we must remove that.
Just following up on that, don't sit down, please, about medication, and that is, how do you, if there is somebody who really, and very often they don't want to be medicated, how do you handle that?
Well, our school is to learn negotiation, to negotiate a lot, using all the means, using the key persons, using the family, using, trying to persuade the person to start with even a small, tiny relationship and then enlarge and start to make it stronger. But negotiation instead of procedures. That's another thing. So if you say, well, it is agreed, it doesn't want, it is non-compliant, so I apply compulsory treatment, voluntary treatment. This is not our way.
You don't ever do
Our
that.
way is try and try again, talk to them, okay?
So the second question is,
No, wait.
do you,
Yeah,
no, I'm sorry, because we have a faith-based advocacy council, which means that we try and connect with people of faith-based communities, and I'm wondering if you do anything of the same nature.
Answer is,
That's my last question.
so the answer is self-evidently yes. We have to work with our communities. Our communities are wonderful resources. They're not usually connected with the mental health system, so we make sure we connect with those resources because they are going to help us, we are going to help them in actually addressing this major problem. So it's self-evidently yes, we have to connect.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving right along. Go ahead,
Good
Rachel.
question. So, in this process, physical health is also taken into account with the mental health at the same location or in the community?
Hi, everybody!
Hello.
Hey, Brown! She made it!
Ci sono dei programmi all'interno della salute mentale che vanno a compensare e integrarsi con gli altri servizi del territorio dove si prendono cura della parte fisica della persona e sono in stretta connessione con il programma della salute mentale.
There is a strong integration between the community mental health centers, the mental health department, and the general health districts that are the services that we have in Trieste. They are two communitarian services that take care of the physical problems, the physical needs of the people, and so it is a constant integration of the two.
La persona ha un suo progetto di vita, di cura e in tutte le sue parti vengono inseriti e integrati gli altri servizi anche per la persona che ha problemi di salute mentale.
That there is a pure program that take into account all the needs of the person, and so the needs of the mental needs, the physical needs, the social needs, and so it is a working together for this and a whole life perspective approach.
So the person is not left alone.
No.
Right there, go ahead.
How did you build a culture of acceptance rather than stigma?
Sorry?
How did you build a culture of acceptance rather than stigma?
So it's a long work. I think that the work is to have not stigmatizing and stigmatized services, and so not to have place where people don't want to go because they fear, because they think that they have no help there, and so in Trieste also we had a strong stigma about the mental problems, but also about the mental health services. It has been a long journey to involve the population, to discuss and to understand which are the fear about this, which are also their needs, because everyone can, at a certain point of his life, to get in contact with a mental problem by himself, herself, but well, beloved ones, other people, and so it is important to work more on acceptance than on stigmatization, and it yeah, working with giving freedom, giving trust to people.